Welcome to the Monday edition of the bilocational show we call Anglican Unscripted, spanning the ocean we call the Atlantic. I'm Kevin Carlson.
I'm Peter Old. It's February the 9th, and this is episode 157 of Anglican Unscripted.
I want to welcome Peter back to the show, and we're going to talk about some interesting things happening over in England. Now, for some of you, this is what we call inside baseball stuff. You really have to love the Church of England and kind of have been involved in it for the last 6 years to really understand what we're talking about. But the Anglican Church as a whole is not known for what we call accountability. You can do a lot as a priest, a bishop, or an archbishop and not be held accountable by your peers. That's correct, Peter, right?
Well, I think it depends. I mean, there's certainly a case to say that some clergy get away with quite a bit.
Yes. Okay. So we've been reading recently about the trials and tribulations of a certain rector named Stephen Sizer, who I've met a couple times at GAFCON, who has been posting things that are, at best, anti-Semitic. And he posts them on his Facebook and his Twitter, and he's kind of gotten the ire of people over time. Tell me more about Stephen.
So Stephen Sizer is the vicar of Virginia Water in Surrey, which is in Guildford Diocese. Virginia Water is probably one of the wealthiest areas in the country. So I don't know what the American equivalent would be, but it's a pretty nice area. It's just around the corner from Ascot, sort of race course, and it's just a beautiful part of the world. It's sort of millionaires row every lane and that kind of stuff. Stephen Sizer is a notable critic of Christian Zionism. Mm-hmm. So the idea that Israel still, as a nation state, has a role in God's plans, and he's been quite a vocal critic of that. He's published a book or two on the subject, but also he just sort of does rounds of conferences and stuff like that, and caused a bit of controversy by appearing, for example, at a conference in Iran alongside some essentially Holocaust deniers. The latest round of controversy involving Stephen Sizer was that he linked on Facebook to a 9/11 conspiracy page, which basically said that Israel was behind the World Trade Center stuff. And he basically linked to it going, "This is interesting and should make you think," that kind of comment, you know. And I mean, I linked to it afterwards saying, "Look, this is what Stephen Sizer linked to. I don't think it's interesting, and I think you should think very seriously about it."
Well,
but it caused a lot of problems here.
In the normal world that we know as of the Church of England, nobody would have said anything inside the Church of England. But this got enough complaints from
Well, yeah, I don't know about that. This got enough complaints from the British Council of Jews,
right,
from Christian and Jews Association, from plenty of actually people within the Church of England as well, who said, right, "You know what? This is just a step too far. You know, there's something to be said that guilt by association isn't a terribly great way to lynch people." But actually, when you start linking to conspiracy things like this and say, and not say this is whack, but this is interesting, and you'll give us pause to thought. You go, actually, what are you linking to here? And it just brought to a head his long association with people on a fairly dubious branch of what I'm going to call anti-Semitic thought.
Mm-hmm. So let's get on and talk about the Bishop of Guildford, who's a new bishop in the Diocese of Guildford. And he wrote, after meeting with Stephen Sizer, what I read, one of the most accountable ship up and shape up documents in probably 20 years from the Church of England.
It's a really interesting exercise. The bishop has come as from Birmingham diocese, where he was one of the suffragans there.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's the Bishop of Guildford. He hasn't actually been installed yet, so he's sort of he's acting as though he's the Bishop of Guildford. He's not technically yet, it's sort of in place and all that kind of stuff. So he sort of spoke to Stephen Sizer initially about a week ago or so, and today we had a press conference this morning UK time where the bishop basically said, look, Stephen Sizer has agreed that he's not going to write or blog or basically do anything at all in the future which involves talking about, commenting on anything to do with the Middle East at all. That clearly this is distracting from his ministry as a Church of England parish priest, even if it is one of the wealthiest parishes in the country. It's distracting from that, and it's got to stop. So the two key aspects are that Stephen Sizer has a social media ban for 6 months. He's already been on that for like a week or so. But secondly, this is the most important thing, that Stephen Sizer has written to the bishop a letter saying he will resign if he ever, at any point in the future, writes or does anything involved with the Middle East. So that's even behind the scenes stuff, talking to people and so on. I mean, that's a pretty heavy disciplinary act. And what I'm hearing is that it was either that or have a full disciplinary charge laid against him. The bishop wasn't going to settle for anything less. In the statement from the bishop, he does say that he's convinced that Stephen Sizer isn't actually, an anti-Semitic, but he's sort of he's really verged on the line here, and enough is enough. And you know what? Despite the fact that he's one of the leading conservative-ish evangelicals, I've been getting a lot of feedback from evangelicals across the spectrum on this issue, who basically said, look, Sizer has gone too far this time and needs to be dealt with. And I think there's a broad acceptance that this statement from the bishop is the right thing. Mm-hmm. That's a clear example of a bishop stepping in and exercising authority and saying, look, this has got to stop. And it has stopped now. And actually, I wouldn't be surprised if at some point Stephen Sizer has to move on from where he is. This is my understanding is that there's a bit of unrest in his parish that this sort of becomes such a high-profile thing repeatedly.
Well, repeatedly, but he's been doing this for quite a while, at least as far as I'm aware, the last 8-10 years.
Yeah, so there was that famous conference he went to in Tehran, mixing with some pretty dubious people. He's been involved. He's been associated with some people who are on the not very pleasant side of anti-Semitism, Holocaust denial stuff. Not just a good historical insight saying well, did 5 million or 6 million people die in the gas chambers? There's that's kind of fair historical criticism. Not that I want to say that I in any way, I'm a Holocaust denier, but arguing over a number between 5 or 6 or 7 million, that's an historical exercise, right?
Yes.
Okay. Arguing whether the gas chambers ever existed in the first place, and putting up links to say that Israel was and Mossad were behind the 9/11 stuff and so on, and international Jewish conspiracy stuff. That's another thing entirely, and those are the kind of people he's been mixing with, even if he hasn't directly said those things himself. And you know what? There comes a point where it's damaging to the mission. And you know what, Kevin? And here's the big deal. Here's now where we're gonna get upset people. It's damaging to evangelicals and traditionalists in the Church of England.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Once again, there is a tendency that we let people off the hook because they are on our side, right? But actually, wrong behaviour needs to be held accountable every time, and even if it's your best mate doing it, even if it's someone who you think is someone who's good to work alongside within the struggle against the revisionist agenda. Actually, if they're doing something seriously wrong, it needs to be addressed. It doesn't need to be pushed under the carpet. Because if we push stuff like this under the carpet, where do we stop?
Well, in unrelated Church of England news, Prince Charles has come out and made an interesting statement in the press that I kind of want to talk about. He is known as the defender of the faith in the Church of England. He said, not too long ago, I'm the defender of the faiths, plural.
So yeah,
so what's going on with the Prince Charles?
What's going on there? When Henry VIII split from Rome, he called himself Defender of the Faith. He actually took that title was given to him by the Pope before he split off for something he'd written against Luther, and the Pope called him Defender of the Faith. And afterwards, he kind of kept on to that. Thought, I'm Defender of the Faith of the Church of England, and successive monarchs in the United Kingdom, England and Scotland, and then the United Kingdom have had the title Defender of the Faith. And in fact, if you get any British coin and you have a look at it on the reverse side, on the head side, you will see in Latin the abbreviation for Defender of the Faith. So a while back, over a decade ago, Prince Charles in an interview said he didn't just want to be Defender of the Faith, he wants to be Defender of Faiths in the UK. Actually, what he meant at the time was he wanted to preserve the sort of religious freedoms that we have here, and he wanted to not just be exclusive for the Church of England. It's become very clear, though, that as the time that he might become king draws near, some people go, well, hang on a minute, yeah, that's all nice and good, but actually, you're the temporal governor of the Church of England, you're one below Jesus, as it were, and you kind of need to take that seriously. And so there's been some sort of press stuff on that, and actually, Prince Charles's people were putting stuff out, basically saying, look, actually, he will be called Defender of the Faith.
Okay,
that's not a problem. That will be happening. He takes his role, his future role as the sort of guardian of the Church of England very seriously. As does our current Queen. She takes that role very seriously. He takes it very seriously. He will be Defender of the Faith, but that doesn't mean that he won't be looking out for other faiths in this country. Well, and rightly so. It's a great religious, liberal environment that we have here.
In a statement made last week, he said, listen, if you're coming to this country, you have to have respect for the people of Britain. And I found that very interesting because he's not said a lot about this in the past.
No, but you see, he's getting ready to be king, right?
Yeah.
He's been waiting long enough. We have jokes here, in the British satirical media about, the Queen hanging on for ages. Prince Charles getting frustrated, and one satire show on Friday had Ed Miliband, the Labour leader, one of the politicians, visiting an old folks' home, and and one of the old dears going, I have to wait ages for my, family to come and all that kind of stuff, and Prince Charles going, yeah, tell me about it.
That's right.
And so there's a joke that he's, frustrated that he's not king already and so on, and do that. But actually, he takes that future role very seriously, and indeed does Prince William and Princess Catherine, who will reign after Prince Charles. They take that role very seriously. So Prince Charles is already taking over some of the monarchical duties from the Queen, who remember is in her late 80s and not a young woman.
Well,
and
we celebrated her ascension.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
She's been on the throne now for 62 plus years.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm glad that you, as a colonist, know that, Kevin. Know your rightful place under your true and proper monarch. So she's been on the throne for 62 years. She has been unwell in the last few years, not sort of seriously unwell, but last year in the winter she was fairly unwell, and there will come a day at some point when Charles will be king.
Well, I want to thank you for your time this morning. We want to keep Stephen, the Bishop of Guildford, Prince Charles, and the Queen of England in your prayers. Thank you much, Peter.
Yay.
God bless.
God bless. Thank you, Kevin.